Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the iPad mini. This is the new one, the 6th generation version, and I've been playing around with this now for the better part of a week, and I really like this, so much so that I've been using an iPad again. And we're going to get into this and what I like about it in just a second, but I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for this with my own funds. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one is paying for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see what this new iPad is all about. Now, the price point on this starts at $499 and goes up from there. The one that we're looking at today is the entry-level version that has Wi-Fi only and 64 gigabytes of storage. There is also a 256 gigabyte version available too. You cannot upgrade the storage on this, although you can attach external storage. So depending on what you plan on installing on it, you might want to go with the larger one so you're not necessarily constrained. But for what I do, which is mostly consumption, content consumption, this 64 gigabyte model is adequate. Now, this is available also with a cellular version, and it supports 5G networks, so you can use it when you're away from your Wi-Fi if you want. And I have to say, I really like how this feels. It reminds me a lot of those data pads that you used to see on Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's just got a very nice feel to it. It's not that heavy. It doesn't get uncomfortable to hold for long periods of time like my iPad Pro does. And it's something that you can very easily pick up from a nightstand and read from, or just walk around the house with it like I've been doing over the last couple of days chasing the kids around. It weighs 0.65 pounds or 293 grams. The cellular version is just slightly heavier, so it's just very nice, lightweight, and very well balanced in the hand. Now, compared to the old Mini, this new one is smaller, but has a larger display because they were able to shrink down these big bezels on the top and the bottom. And I always felt like the old Mini wasn't mini enough because of those bezels, and this new one just feels right to me. Now, the display on this new one is 8.3 inches. It's an IPS display running at 2266 by 1488. It has 500 nits of brightness, so it's nice and bright under most circumstances. It's got a 4.6 to 3 aspect ratio because it is slightly longer than the prior edition display. And it also has a greater pixel density at 326 pixels per inch. So it really looks nice and sharp. The colors look great on this. This has that True Tone display. So even if you're doing some photo editing and creative work on it, I think the color output on this is certainly adequate for that. But the display is not perfect. One of the things that I and many other reviewers have been noticing is that if you scroll very quickly up and down on a web page or an app, you'll notice a bit of a jelly effect with the display. Apple said that they're not going to fix this problem because they don't consider it to be a problem. It's just the nature of its display. So if this is something you're not crazy about, I would avoid the Mini. But otherwise, the display looks pretty decent. And to be honest with you, I haven't really noticed it all that much unless I'm really quickly scrolling through a web page or an app. Now, the rest of the hardware here is a lot like the iPad Air, just smaller. You've got your nice aluminum back here that wraps around with those flat edges. Again, really nice to hold in the hand. On the bottom here, you do have a USB Type-C port. They got rid of the Lightning port that was on the prior generation. And this is a full service port, so it does power, video out, and data devices. So you can plug in a docking station and get your video output going at the same time the power is going in. You can attach USB storage to it if you want. You got a lot of flexibility out of this port, provided the apps you're using support that. This also has stereo speakers, but it's only really stereo when you have it in the landscape orientation. So you've got your 2 speaker grills down here, another 2 on that side, and when it's in landscape, you've got a really nice sounding set of speakers that sound good for music and movies and conference calls and everything else that you might want to do with it. On the top, you have your Touch ID sensor. So this does not use the face detector. It's got the fingerprint sensor, but it's built into the power switch. So when you want to unlock your iPad, you just push the power button in with your finger. It detects your fingerprint and you're off and running. I would suggest programming in 2 fingerprints at a minimum, one for your right hand and one for your left hand, depending on how you're holding it. And that's one thing it prompts you to do when you're getting it set up. And the volume rocker switch is on the other side of the power button here, and these will smartly reorient themselves based on the screen orientation. So whenever you push up on one of these buttons, depending on how you're holding it, it will make the volume go up, and then it'll flip it around when you flip the screen over. So pretty smart little touch there. And you'll also notice that there is a spot here for the Apple Pencil. This is a capacitive charging spot for the Pencil. It also pairs the Pencil up with your iPad. Just note that you have to use the second generation Pencil with the iPad mini. The first generation Pencil, which is still available and costs less, does not work with the iPad mini, so you have to go with this one. The nice thing, though, is that it will stick to the side and it holds itself there pretty nicely. And this functions exactly like it does on the Air and the Pro. We'll take a look at how the Pencil works with it a little bit later in the video. Now, it's got a very nice camera system on board. The back camera here is a 12 megapixel camera, shoots really nice photos, as you can see here, and it also shoots nice video. You can shoot up to 4K at 60 frames per second out of the back camera here, although there is a bit of a camera bump. It does not have optical image stabilization like the iPhones do, but it does have its digital stabilizer, and it does a very nice job shooting video, and it's definitely more than adequate if you don't have any other cameras nearby. So it's a nice rear camera. And the front-facing camera, which is located right here, is also very nice. It's an ultra-wide 122-degree field of view lens, shoots 12 megapixels. You can do 1080p video at 60 frames per second. It is super clean and actually digitally stabilizes itself quite well. So it works well as a selfie camera for doing your videos and stuff, but it also supports the Apple Center Stage feature. So when you're on a FaceTime call, the camera will digitally follow you around if you're walking in front of the iPad. We saw that on the review we just did of the entry-level iPad, and it looks like this wider angle FaceTime camera is making its way into other Apple products as they come out. And this was a really nice addition to the line because we've seen how these front cameras are often pretty lousy, even on the high-end PCs. And now we're starting to see some really nice conferencing cameras make their way onto other platforms. That center stage feature has to be supported in the app that you're using. It does not appear at the moment to work for video recording, just in conferencing apps, but hopefully they will add the ability to record with it soon. Now inside, this has an Apple A15 processor along with 4 gigabytes of RAM. As you can see here, everything is very quick when you're browsing the web. It really does feel like it's more than adequately powered to do what it's supposed to do here. It also supports Wi-Fi 6, so it will give you some decent performance on your local network, and that's what we're connected to right now. I found everything else I ran on it, like YouTube, works just fine. You can also flip it over here and go into the split screen view, so I can hit this button here and pull back up my Safari browser and play a video at the same time I am reading a web page. So it seems to do all the things that modern iPads do here very quickly, but in a small form factor. And even though the screen is small on this, it is still pretty powerful. I loaded up iMovie here, and I was working on a fun little video project with some video I shot on my new iPhone. So this is a 1080p 30 video that was shot in that new cinematic mode on the iPhone 13 Pro. And then it's going to cross-dissolve into a 4K 60 file that I shot on my GoPro. And it just does everything kind of seamlessly here. I can go ahead and maybe change this to a different cross-dissolve, and it just does it just like that. Pretty neat. You can also apply filters very quickly. So if we go over to our 4K 60 file here, I can just hit a button and apply that filter, and it plays back in real time. So it's just super, super quick, and it really feels like a mini version of the iPad Pro that I bought a few years ago. And the Apple Pencil on the Mini feels a lot like it does on the Pro, just on a smaller size screen. So as we write out here my name, it just feels natural like it does on the other iPads. Very little latency here with the Pencil. You've got all of the pressure detection and the tilt detection that you have on the larger iPads, and it all just feels nice on this, just like I would expect it to. It also lets you do all the cool stuff like handwriting recognition, so I could write out my name here with my chicken scratch, and it generally picks it up pretty accurately, a lot more accurately than my old Newton did. So it's good for note-taking and that sort of thing. And that was largely what I was using my iPad for, was note-taking in meetings. And I really much prefer to carry around this smaller device versus the larger one. And of course, my pencil docks here to the side just like it did before. And the other thing I picked up for my iPad was one of the smart covers. These have been around for a while. They attach magnetically to the back of the iPad and then close up over the top of the screen to protect it. And it's got a nice felt fabric here, and when you lift the smart cover up, it turns the iPad on and you can flip it around this way. What I like about this case is that it's very easily detached if you don't want to have it on the iPad. I often take mine off when I'm holding it, and then it also works like a little stand here to get your iPad stood up for doing things like gaming. And speaking of gaming, let's take a look and see how games play on this iPad. So this is Ocean Horn, a game that you can find on the Apple App Store and in the Apple Arcade. I've got my Xbox controller paired up with it. The game looks great. You can see the Xbox controller is about as big as the iPad mini screen here, but the frame rate feels very smooth. It looks like it's running at 60 frames per second or thereabouts, and just an overall great gaming experience and really nice performance out of a little iPad here. And on the 3D Mark Wildlife Gaming Benchmark test, I got a score of 9,550. That puts the performance of this new iPad mini below what I got on my iPad Pro 11 that I've had since 2018. But to be honest with you, I don't notice the difference. This one feels just as fast for all the stuff that I do with my iPad. And I suspect for a lot of consumers, this is going to be more than adequate. The iPad software really doesn't push the hardware in a way that you can really notice the difference, in my opinion, between the top-end iPad and one of these that kind of sits in the mid-range. And for me, the convenience of its smaller size and its lighter weight makes it something that I prefer to use over the more powerful iPad. And that's why I've been quite pleased with my experiences here with this one so far. Now, Apple says the battery life out of this new iPad is about 10 hours, and I would largely agree with that assessment based on my usage of the device. If you're doing the basics like web browsing and email, you could definitely get to that 10-hour mark, certainly more than enough to get through a workday. It's when you start doing the video editing and the game playing that you might see an impact in overall battery life. But I think for the most part, most people will experience a nice long day of usage out of this iPad without having to recharge. It does support 20-watt charging through that USB Type-C port at the bottom. They give you the charger in the box, so you have that. It does not, though, support wireless charging. And overall, I am just really pleased with this thing. It really feels like what the vision of the iPad should be. Something lightweight, convenient, easy to hold. And I like this so much that I'm actually picking it up and using it throughout the day for my day-to-day workflow stuff. And I haven't touched my iPad Pro in weeks. In fact, it's dead right now because it's just been sitting idle. So whatever Apple did here, I really like. And I think if you're looking for a smaller iPad that does everything the big iPads do, this one is definitely worth considering because I think it really is an outstanding product from Apple. That's going to do it for now. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Hot Sauce and Video Games, Brian Parker, Chris Allegretta, Tom Albrecht, Thomas Anfang, Jim Tanis, and Handheld Obsession. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.